Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Jo and this is Joey Sewy, and today we are talking about the third part of my blouse and shirt making series, and today it's attaching the front pleated section on this Pauline Alice Carme blouse. The skills that I'm going to cover today are partly specifically to this pattern, but also they will teach you and show you how to insert any kind of pleated insert onto a garment. So if you haven't already seen parts 1 and 2, you might want to jump back particularly to part 1 because that covers how this pleated section is made, and you can see it on this blouse as well. So it's a bib shape and it's pleated fabric that then has top stitching that holds it down. And as you will have seen in part 1, the way that you make that is you actually take a rectangular piece of fabric and you put the pleats into it and then you cut it to shape. And that would be the same whatever insert you were going to do. So whether maybe there's a yoke on the back of this shirt, for example, you could do a pleated yoke, you could do a pleated shirt shoulder insert, you could just do a strip of fabric across here that was pleated, you could do a pleated pocket. There are all sorts of places that you can add this detail. So there are some ideas about that in the first part, and it also shows you how to create the pattern piece. This section will show you how to get the pattern piece attached to your garment. So let's get into it. Here's the curve of the front of the blouse where the bib goes, and just after stay stitching, this is pressing the stay stitching flat because it just wrinkles the fabric a little bit, so I'm flattening it back out again with my iron. And then the next process that you need to do is clip right up to the stay stitching around the curve. So you don't need to clip at all on the straight edges, and you definitely don't clip through the stay stitching because the stay stitching is there to help the fabric stay strong. But you clip around the curve. Turn the fabric, or turn your shirt or blouse front to wrong side out, and then you turn over just enough so that you can see the stitching line, the stay stitching line on the inside of your blouse. So you can see there the stitching line on the inside of the fold. And what we're doing here is creating a folded edge that will then be top stitched in place to hold the bib. I'm using my clapper, which you will have seen in earlier videos. It sets the crease once you have pressed it. So the iron puts heat into the fabric and steam, which creases it. But if you don't set the crease, it can stop being quite so crisp, and the clapper speeds up that job. If you don't have one, you just have to wait for the fabric to cool. Then take your prepared bib and the blouse front, and you're going to pin the two together, right sides up. Fold the front in half, and I just want to find the very center front. I think I'd forgotten to mark that from the pattern, but if you've got a notch, then you will use that at that point. Line up the centre front of the blouse with the centre front of the bib, and this is where the buttons will go later, and then you pin around that curve. The blouse front should be lying flat at this stage, and the bib front should be lying flat as well. So you're pinning that folded creased edge to the flat edge of the bib. Then you take that to the machine, begin to sew along the line you just pinned. Sew a consistent distance from the edge of the folded fabric, and lift the foot if you need to get around the curve. So don't crease or crumple the fabric. This is speeded up a lot from real life. I think it's 800 times speed. So go slowly, take your time. This is top stitching that will be centre and front on your blouse, so take care. And then when you get to the end, there's no need to backstitch because the end will eventually be encased in your blouse. And finally, here is a close-up of that top stitching. So as you can see, I was very close to the folded edge, and I did my best to be a consistent distance, and I did that pretty well. No one's ever going to look this closely at your blouse, and if they are, either they sew themselves or they want to step back. So don't worry too much about it, but it is probably the place on your blouse you want to take the most care. So we have a front panel finished and ready for the buttons. So this isn't a specific pattern review, but the one criticism I would have of this pattern and this technique, and I don't yet have an answer for it, is the fact that this method that I've just shown you, which is the way this pattern describes to do it, leaves the edges here raw. So the only way, I'll show you. So the edges, this is the inside of the shirt where I've sewn the bib on this version. And the only way of then finishing those is to bind them by hand, or you could go around with an overlocker, but the problem is by this point they're cut into many pieces because of the clipping that you do to lay flat, and that's absolutely essential. So if anybody knows a good technique for sewing this kind of inside out, or another technique other than binding the edges with bias binding or similar, I would be really interested to hear it, because I feel like there should be a way, but it might just be one of those places where hand sewing is king and you just need to go with the hand sewing. So that's your question of the day. Do you know a better way of finishing the inside of the bib? Thank you very much for watching. Part 4 will be coming up really soon, where you see me make a complete mess of the button placket, but also you see me do it right. And that's the version you want to follow. So I'll be back really soon. All the other videos are linked in a playlist up here, and please subscribe if you haven't already. See you again later. Bye.